Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Babun fil ma'adini wal rikaz. So this is the chapter related to the ma'adin. Ma'adin is the jama' of ma'din and rikaz, rakaz. So the ma'din refers to like ore, iron ores. So anything that is precious metals, basically. Precious metals that are found in the earth, they're known as ma'adin. Right? So ma'adin. And rikaz from the word rakaz, which means something that's firmly rooted in something that's murakkaz, markaz. Right? It's like in the center, it's firmly fixed. And this is a word, rikaz can be used for treasure as well. Treasure. Okay, so he says, so this chapter, although it's not supposed to be a chapter that's mentioned in zakat, because it's got nothing to do with zakat really, in the sense that zakat is to do with wealth that you have for a year, etc. But this is normally to do with ushur. This is normally to do with, not ushur, khumus, which is the ghanima. But they've just brought it because it has some resemblance with certain masail of zakat. So he says, قال معدن ذهب أو فضة أو حديد أو رصاص أو صفر وجد في أرض خراج أو عشر ففيه الخمس. So the ma'din, the ore or the natural deposits of dhahab, gold, fidda, silver, hadid. Hadid means iron and it can also mean any metal. So normally when you read the commentary, they'll say things like ما ينطبع بالنار. Yeah, ما ينطبع بالنار, which means ما يلين, anything that becomes soft when you put it in fire. So it basically melts. So fidda, hadid, rasas is lead, and then sufr is copper. Wujida fi ardi kharajin is found in kharaj land or ushur land. Now, before we go into kharaj land, ushur land, what we have to understand is these masail, like when you're studying fiqh, it's very important to try and list in your head the discussions that you're going to have regarding the topic that's at hand. So for example, like, have we come across ma'din before? Maybe, yeah. Okay, we've come across earth before in the chapter of tayammum, where the discussion is with regards to what kind of land can we do tayammum with. So that's been mentioned. And over here, it's also mentioned as well. And over there in tayammum, there's also a discussion that you can only do tayammum with earth-based substances. So earth-based substances disqualifies things like plants or things that are like they melt in fire. That's what the kind of argument they bring. So anyway, like that, you should also try and list for yourself all the different discussions that take place with regards to, for example, dhahab. So in fiqh, where are the chapters where dhahab is mentioned? So for example, zakat obviously is one of them. Zakat is one of them. And then maybe, for example, like with regards to buying and selling, to do with riba. Yeah, there's discussion of dhahab as well over there. Or for example, with regards to the discussion of mahar, there might be discussion there, or in inheritance, etc. Anyway, so this is the discussion of ma'adin. So he says, any earth-based deposits that are made from gold, silver, iron, lead, copper, and it's not just these 6 types of or 5 types of metals. This can be extended to all types of metals. Yeah. Wujida fi ardi kharaj, that's found in kharaj land or ushur land. What's a kharaj land? So there's 2 types of land, Muslim land and non-Muslim land. If the Muslims take over non-Muslim land, they either take it over with sulh, where there's no fighting, or they take it over with unwatan, which means through forcefully taking it. So for example, like there were certain lands that were taken through sulh, yeah, like Jerusalem and others that were handed over, there was sulh. And there were certain lands that were taken over through forcefully, yeah. So for example, many parts of Iraq and others. So if a land is taken through sulh, that land, if it's kept, so let's say for example I'm the Muslim general and I go to the land of the non-Muslims and I take the non-Muslim land, all right, through sulh, and I leave it with them. I say to them, okay, you people, let's say for example, if it's, let's say, French people, I say, you French people are going to keep this land. You guys do whatever you want with it, right? But you're going to do everything under the Islamic government. And so what's going to happen is this land is kharaj, a tax basically. They have to annually give a particular amount of tax on whatever they grow. Yeah, so whatever they grow, they have to give a particular tax on that. And even if they don't grow anything deliberately, they still have to give a particular tax on it. However, if now a Muslim takes that land now, it no longer is called kharaj land. Yeah, kharaj means produce. It's no longer kharaj land. It now becomes an ushur land. Ushur land means that if the Muslim was to grow something on there, he'd have to give 10% of whatever he grows. Yeah, but there's a difference between Abu Hanifa and Sahib, and we discussed some ikhtilaf on that, but more ikhtilaf is going to come later on when we talk about the zuru'. So there's ushur on this. That's the first type of land that has been taken through sulh. If a land has been taken unwatan, means forcefully, then that land remains kharaj land, whether the non-Muslims have it or even if the Muslims take it. It's only later on that if the progeny dies or the government takes it back, it becomes an ushur land. Okay, so that's the little difference between the kharaj land and the ushur land. And like I said, the kharaj is a particular tax on the produce, and ushur is obviously zakat, which is an ibadah, so it's not a tax. فَفِيهِ الْخُمُسِ. So any of those 5 metals or any other metals that are taken out, then there is going to be khumus. Khumus means 1/5 of that thing that's taken out. Let's say 1 kilo of gold is found. So that means 200 grams of gold will be given to the government. Right, it goes to the government. And the same with silver and iron and lead, etc. Right, it's going to go to the government, and the remainder is going to be taken by the individual. Now, this does not mention about the different types of lands. So let me explain to you guys about 4 types of lands. So first type of land is what we call ard mamluka. Yeah, ard mamluka. Yeah, a land which is owned. Ard mubaha. Let's start with ard mubaha. Mubaha means it's a land that's permitted for anyone to use. Right, no one's really the owner of it. Like you get these deserts and forests and jungles. Right, so in the olden days, no one used to own that. That was just like just anyone can go and take things from there. Number 2 is you have public property. So public land is that land which belongs to the Muslim public. All right, so everyone has a fair equal share in there. Belongs to the Muslim public, and the government would have someone overseeing the land. And then the third type of land you have is we call private property. So like what we own nowadays. So you have a house, you have a garden, you have fields, right? So you own that, it's private property. And this is called ard mamluka. Yeah. And then number 4, you have ard waqf. Waqf means something which is considered to be endowment. So it's like a piece of land that is meant to be benefited from. The poor benefit from it. So let's say, for example, I decide to give a 1 acre piece of land as waqf. What happens is that piece of land now becomes the government's going to take control of it, and then whatever is grown on there, whatever buildings are built on there, and any of the rent that comes out of there, that's now going to go towards the poor people, okay, forever. So this is considered to be waqf. So nowadays, for example, you have the masajid are all waqf. They're all considered waqf. And then in Muslim countries, if you have madaris, or if you have these kind of places where it's basically public funds, they become waqf as well. So these are the 4 types of lands that have been mentioned. And as we go through, I'll mention to you. So here he's just simply mentioned ardun wujida fi ardin ardi kharajin aw ushrin. What's a ardi kharaj? Which one of these are ardi kharaj and which ones are ardi ushur? So the mubaha ones doesn't seem to be ard kharaj or ushur. Yeah, mubaha just means open land. No one belongs to no one. And the other lands, right, they seem to have some rulings attached to it. So he says, ففيه الخمس عندنا. So in this will be khumus according to us. وقال الشافعي رحمه الله, Imam Shafi'i says, and others as well, لا شيء عليه فيه. There is nothing upon him. Meaning, there's no such thing as a khumus if you find gold or silver or anything in the land. It's all yours, right? You don't have to give the government anything. Why is this for? Because he says, لأنه مباح سبقت يده إليه كالصيد. So his argument is that this gold was mubah. Mubah means it was permitted for anyone to take. It was there for anyone. No one owned it. سبقت يده إليه. Sabaqat means got there first. So his hand got there first, right? Before everyone else. And he got it. So it's his. Like hunting. So he gives an analogy with hunting, and he says basically, when a person hunts, let's say for example, I go out hunting and I want to hunt a deer. So I go out, I hunt the deer. That deer was allowed for anyone to catch. Now because I caught it, sabaqat yadi ilay. My hand got it first, so now it belongs to me. So this is the analogy that he draws. So he says, just like in hunting things are mubah. Whoever gets there first is theirs. No one has to give a fifth of whatever they hunt. So why would they have to give a fifth of whatever they find in the ground? إلا إذا كان المستخرج ذهبا أو فضة. So Imam Shafi rahimahullah, he exempts and says, unless what's taken out, the mustakhraj, what's found is gold and silver. If it's gold and silver, فَيَجِبُ فِيهِ الزَّكَاةِ, then zakat will be necessary. Now, when he says zakat will be necessary, what does it mean that zakat will be necessary? Like does it mean that he has to wait a whole year? So let's say he found the stuff on the 1st of Ramadan. Does he have to wait a whole year until the next 1st of Ramadan? Or is it immediately he has to give 2.5% of that? So this is where the Shafis have different aqwals about this, right? So you can read in Binaya, Imam Aini has brought several opinions here about this masla. So you can check over there. I'm not going to go through the aqwal. All I'm going to mention to you is in the hashi over here. Yeah, so he says over here, he says, yeah, actually he does mention it over here. لكن عند الشافعي الواجب في الذهب والفضة 3 أقوال. أصحها 3 قولز. أن الواجب فيها الربع, that he has to give ربع عشر. So immediately he has to give 2.5% of it, whether 1 year has passed or not. And the قول الثاني أن الواجب فيهما الخمس مثل قولنا. Second قول is that he has to give خمس, like we say. And this is Muzani's قول. والثالث ما ناله بلا تعب ومؤونة ففيه العشر. Anything that he attained without any difficulty or toiling, then he has to give a 10th. وما ناله بتعب ومؤونة, anything that he had to put a lot of effort into to gain it, then like he had to use machinery and things to dig it all out, then he has to give 2.5%. Yeah. Anyway, you can check in Binaya for other aqwal that is mentioned as well. إلا إذا كان المستخرج ذهبا أو فضة فيجب فيه zakat. So he treats dhahab and fidda unique to zakat, and all the other metals he doesn't consider them to be zakatable assets. ولا يشترط, and it's not considered to be a condition of the passing of a year, a hawl. ولا يشترط الحول في قول. Yeah, so في قول meaning that according to one of the qawls in the Shafi madhab, meaning in the Shafi madhab themselves they've differed that do you have to wait 1 year since that gold has been taken out to have to give the zakat, or do you have to give it straight away? So he says one of the qawls says immediately 2.5%. Why is this? Why does he have to give the zakat on this for? لأنه نماء كله, because this is considered to be productive wealth. When we said gold and silver are considered to be intrinsically productive wealth, they've been created to be productive wealth. They are 2 metals that are used to attain other things, meaning these are 2 metals that people use to buy houses and cars and food and all that. So these aren't necessarily the primary purpose is not to become mal in and of itself. It's actually a means. لأنه مال كله والحول للتنمية. Yeah. ولأنه نماء كله, because it's considered to be, all of it's considered to be nama. And the year passing is for tanmiyah, is for it to grow, and we know gold and silver grows anyway, naturally. So you don't need the 1 year to pass. That's one of the arguments for it. Okay, so that's Imam Shafi rahimullah's position on this. Remember, to do with anything that you find. وَلَنَا قَوْلُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ, and our argument is, وَفِي الرِّكَازِ الْخُمُسِ. This is a hadith. So we say, look, this hadith says, in rikaz, there is a khumus. You have to give a khumus in rikaz. Now, this is Shafi say, well, we also accept that there is a khumus in rikaz. Rikaz, he translates rikaz. This is where we differ with the Shafis. Imam Shafis and others, they translate the word rikaz as meaning buried treasure. Okay, they translate rikaz as buried treasure. So they say, if you find buried treasure, you have to give a khumus of it. Okay, and we're going to talk about buried treasure later. So he interprets rikaz as being buried treasure. He says there's a difference between ma'din and buried treasure. Ma'din is that which is found in the earth that's been put there by Allah, and that's ma'din. And rikaz is that which is found in the earth but has been put there by makhluk, by the creation. Yeah, and we're going to talk about this difference later on. But we say, وَهُوَ مِنَ الرَّكْزِ, and we say the word rikaz linguistically is from the word rakaz, rakaza. And rakaz, linguistically means in ithbat. It means ithbat, to establish something in some place. Like, in Arabic you say to someone, rakiz ala hada, focus on this. So therefore, we say that because the linguistic meaning of rakaz is to be firmly put somewhere, that also applies to ma'din. Ma'din also has the same meaning. You can almost say, like the Hanafis say, you can almost say that this word is considered to be a mushtarak word. Yeah, it's a mushtarak word. Yeah, so rikaz can apply to buried treasure, and it can also apply to something which is, because it has that same meaning. Yeah, it has that same meaning. So over here, وَهُوَ مِنْ الرَّكَزِ, we don't say it's majaz. We don't say haqiqatan it applies to treasure and majazan it applies to ma'dan. No, because we say you can't have a haqiqa and a majaz that apply to both meanings at the same time. Yeah, so like for example, let's say I say the word lion is for the animal that roams the jungles, and the word lion I use it for a soldier in the battle. So if I was to say in the battle, the lion killed many of the soldiers, many of the enemy, I can't intend both meanings by this. Yeah, so Hanafis are very strict on this argument of, intending two meanings, haqiqa and majaz at the same time. They say you can't do that. Where the Shafis allow that. They say you can intend haqiqa and majaz at the same time, so long as the haqiqa and majaz are not opposites. If the haqiqa and the majaz are considered to be opposite each other, like the two meanings are considered the opposite, then you can't have that meaning. Right? But besides this, you can. That's why we say that this is a mushtarak word. هو من الركز فأطلق على المعدن. And the word rakaz can be applied to ma'din as well, because that's also considered to be markuz fil ard. And the rational argument is لأنها كانت في أيدي الكفرة. Yeah. So this sort of like, let's say this buried treasure, for example. Let's say buried treasure is found in the ground. Who did it used to belong to? It either belonged to Muslims or it belonged to non-Muslims. If it belonged to Muslims, then it's going to be considered to be in the ruling of lost property. Let's say, for example, you dug up the ground and you found some jewelry, right? A necklace and bracelets. And you found on the necklace and bracelets some markings that said like Muslim names. Then you know most likely that this jewelry belongs to Muslims. So now, therefore, this is considered to be like lost property. So you have to treat it like lost property. You have to announce to people, has anyone lost any property? Come to me and identify it and I'll give it to you. And if he doesn't find anyone, then he keeps it for a year or so. And then after that, he gives it to the poor people. So, or it could actually be for non-Muslims. It could have been there for non-Muslims when the Muslims took over the land. Before they took over, non-Muslims had buried their wealth. So he says, وَلِأَنَّهَا كَانَتْ فِي أَيْدِي الْكَفَرَةِ. So he says, because this treasure, this rikaz, could have been in the hands of the kuffar. فَحَوَتْهَا أَيْدِينَا. So then our hands, حَوَتْ, حَوَى يَحْوِي means to take hold of. So it's حَوَتْهَا أَيْدِينَا. Our hands got to it. Yeah, took hold of it. غَلَبَةً, forcefully. فَكَانَتْ غَنِيمَةً. So when we took it, it becomes ghanima. Yeah. So when the non-Muslims had it, it was theirs. But just like on land, if we take non-Muslims' property on land in a war, we take their property. This is called ghanima. And by taking it forcefully, we call this ghanima. And the rule in the Quran is that, inna lillahi khumusahu wa lirrasuli wa lidhil qurba, that whatever Allah gives to the soldiers of the fate, of the ghanima, then it belongs to the Muslims. 1/5 of it goes to the government, and the rest goes to, 80% of it goes to the soldiers. So he says, فَحَوَتْهَا أَيْدِينَا, so our hands have got hold of this wealth now. Although it's underground, it's still the same. Yeah, it's like we've taken, that was on top of the grounds in their hands, and this is below the ground. فَكَانَتْ غَنِيمَةً وَفِي الْغَنَائِمِ, and when it comes to ghanima, al-khumus, and the rule of the Quran is very clear, that مَا أَفَاءَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ, yeah, whatever Allah has given to His messenger, then فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ. So بِخِلَافِ الصَّيْد, as opposed to hunting. Why can't we, does everyone understand up to here? Does everyone understand this idea, this concept? That we're trying to use this hadith. We don't have a hadith. We're not using a hadith of Madin. We're using the hadith of rikaz. We're saying rikaz, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you find any rikaz, any treasure in the ground, then it is, 1/5 of it has to go to the government. Khumus. Yeah, and the rest you can take. And we say, how is the resemblance between rikaz and Madin there? So we say, because rikaz is hidden buried treasure, it resembles ghanima. So ghanima is taken forcefully from non-Muslims in a war. Likewise, it says, though this has been taken forcefully. بِخِلَافِ الصَّيْد, as opposed to hunted animals. Imam Shafi's analogy, we say this is an incorrect analogy. It says, قِيَاس مَعَ الْفَارِقَةِ. Yeah, so بِخِلَافِ الصَّيْد. Why is the difference? The difference is, remember he said, just like if there's 10 people and they go after a deer, whoever gets it, it's theirs. He says, بِخِلَافِ لِأَنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي يَدِ أَحَدٍ. He says, because the Sayyid did not belong to anyone. لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي يَدِ أَحَدٍ. Yeah, it wasn't in the hands of anyone at all. Right, so it's basically no one's property. إِلَّا أَنَّ لِلْغَانِمِينَ يَدًا حُكْمِيَّةً. So someone might say, well, how can you say that about the non-Muslims' wealth then as well? Yeah, we say, yes, the non-Muslims, so let's say for example there's non-Muslims there, and our soldiers go to take their wealth. How do the non-Muslims take that mal? How does it become theirs? So we've understood that the qiyas of the Madin, he used the Madin example, we're using Rikaz example. But we're saying they're both the same. So the Rikaz or the Madin, right, that's in the hands of the kuffar. They own it. Or at least at one time in history they owned it, they had it. Whereas the deer, no one owns it, it's a free animal, it's roaming around. So they're to say whoever gets it first, it belongs all to them. That's qiyas ma'al fariq. Illa anna lil ghanimina. Here's like someone could ask this question, that how is it possible that this ghanima wasn't in the hands of any of the Muslims? So he says, illa anna lil ghanimina yadan hukmiyatan. However, the ghanims are the Muslim soldiers. Ghanama yaghnimu, it means someone who gains something, someone who gets faida, benefit out of something. So he says, anna lil ghanimiyya yadan hukmiyatan. The ghanimin, like let's say for example there's 10 soldiers, they go to attack. Yeah, one of them gets, so out of 10, only one of them gets, let's say, I don't know, let's come up with something. Let's say we're going to take from them a car, right? From the non-Muslim, we're going to take a car. So let's call it Zayd takes the car. He's a soldier that gets the car and drives it all the way to the Muslim lands. The other 9 didn't get it. So then, how is it possible you can say the ghanima belongs to the other 9 when it only has been taken by Zayd? Meaning, if you use the same concept with regards to, let's say the Sayyid example, that whoever gets it first is theirs. So therefore, whoever gets it first should be theirs. If Zayd got it first, it should be his. But that's not how it works in a battle. In a battle, let me show you how it works. In a battle, the way it works is, all the soldiers, they take whatever they can, and then they collect it all together, and then all together they take it back to the Muslim lands. And once it gets to the Muslim lands, and the leader of the Muslims counts it, then and only then is it going to be distributed equally amongst everyone. So when it comes to ghanima, everyone gets exactly the same amount of ghanima, right? So Muslim soldiers, anyone who took part in the war, whether they were actively in combat or whether they were in reserves, as long as they were in the war, they get 80% of, and 20% goes to the government. So this is why the question was asked over here, the hidden question, which is, how comes the Ghanimin get it when they didn't find it? He says, أن للغانم يدا حكمية. We say they had legal possession of it. They had legal possession. لثبوتها على الظاهر. Yeah, so لثبوتها على الظاهر, meaning because ظاهرا, they seem to have had like their hands on it. They were in the war. So because they were in the war and they were physically active in the war, so we say that seems to indicate towards the hukmiyah. So why do we need to understand this concept of hukmiyah for? So hukmiyah is a very important concept throughout fiqh. So for example, like let's say there's a person who breaks their wudu continuously, right? Every time I do my wudu breaks. Yeah, I've got, let's say, an injury, and that injury is causing blood to come out. So in this situation, what happens to a person? So what happens basically is that because that wudu breaks, haqiqatan they don't have wudu. However, hukman, they have wudu. Meaning legally, the Sharia has allowed that person who continuously breaks their wudu, which we call them a ma'dhur, we allow them to have wudu. We say this person haqiqatan doesn't have wudu, but hukman, legally they have wudu, right? In this legal sense. So this concept of legal is where the Sharia steps in, and the Sharia adjusts the rule for that individual. Yeah, adjusts the rule for that individual. So he says the Ghanimeen have possession, but that possession is not haqiqi possession. It's considered to be hukmi. The haqiqi possession is for the wajid, the guy who found it, Zayd. He found the car, he took the car. He's the haqiqi possessor. But the other guys get possession hukmiya. So it's like all 10 of them got it. لِثُبُوتِهَا عَلَى الظَّاهِرِ. Yeah, so لِثُبُوتِهَا عَلَى الظَّاهِرِ means because it's thabit ظاهرا. ظاهرا, it's as though they went there and they were active. وَأَمَّا الْحَقِيقَةُ فَلِلْوَاجِدِ. And as for the haqiqi, أَمَّا الْحَقِيقِيَّةُ, as for the haqiqi, meaning اليد الحقيقية, the haqiqi possession, who was that for? That was for the finder. The finder was Zayd. He was the one that found the car in the battle. So therefore, فَاعْتَبَرْنَا الْحُكْمِيَّةِ فِي حَقِّ الْخُمُسِ. So you see what he's saying? He's saying this is why we have taken the hukmiyah when it comes to khumus. Yeah. وَالْحَقِيقِيَّةَ فِي حَقِّ الْأَرْبَعَةِ الْأَخْمَاسِ حَتَّى كَانَتْ لِلْوَاجِدِ. So this is why he says in ghanima concept, we say that فَاعْتَبَرْنَا الْحُكْمِيَّةِ فِي حَقِّ الْخُمُسِ. So let's go back to the masla we're talking about now. So everyone understand this concept, or shall I say again, about how they use the concept of ghanima in battle to draw as type of analogy with finding gold deposits or silver deposits in the ground or treasure in the ground. Everyone understand this? Okay, so now let's go back to this masala now. So فَاعْتَبَرْنَا الْحُكْمِ. So here, let's try to phrase this in a question and answer form, okay, so that people understand. Let's say someone asks this question. Okay, now I understand in battle, if 10 people go for a battle and one person brings back a car, that car is going to be shared, 80% of that car is going to be shared between all 10 people. I understand that because one individual had yad haqiqiyah and the other 9 had yad hukmiyah, right? Because the Sharia has given them. Okay, next. But how do you understand over here, if I dig my garden and I find gold or silver, or I find other precious metals, or metals anyway, just metals, if I find metals in the ground, how is it that the government gets a fifth? On what basis does the government get a fifth? So we say, that's the same thing. Therefore, we say the government deserves a fifth. Yeah, because it's got yad hukmiyah. And the finder, he's got yad haqiqiyah. So that's why now he is the one that actually gets the 80%. Yeah, because of the hadith. The hadith said, فِي الرِّكَازِ الْخُمُسِ. So in brackets you would say, فِي الرِّكَازِ الْخُمُسِ لِلْحُكُومَةِ. Yeah, or للإمام حكما. Yeah, so they for them belongs the rikaz hukman. So if 100 people were digging in the ground simultaneously, and each one of them was to find something in the ground, every single one of them, you'd say, whether it was daytime or nighttime, the hukuma deserves a fifth. The government deserves a fifth. Why is that? Even though they didn't know. Even though they didn't know. Why? Because we say hukman, the sharia has stepped in and hukman given them this virtue. Okay, just like the concept of haqiqatan and hukman when it came to the soldiers in war. Okay, can you translate لِثُبُوتِهِ عَلَى الظَّاهِرِ again, please? Yeah. So look, let me translate this again. So he says, وَفِي الْغَنَائِمِ, and as for war booty, al-khumus goes to, وَفِي الْغَنَائِمِ al-khumus, and in Ghanaim, al-khumus goes to the government. بِخِلَافِ, as opposed to as-sayd. As opposed to the sayd, meaning as opposed to the game, yeah, the hunted animal. Over there the qiyas is not considered to be the same. لأنه, why? لم يكن في يد أحد, because the game or the hunted animal was not in the hands of anyone. إلا أن, this إلا is what we call إلا منقطع. Okay, this إلا is not saying إلا متصل, as in whatever was said before carries on. No, that sentence stops. ولكن أن للغانمين يدا حكمية. The غانمين, they get the يدا حكمية. Yeah, so the people who are in the ghanima, the people who are in the war, they get the their share. حكمية, not حقيقية. لثبوتها على الظاهر, because this is what is considered to be thabit from what is zahir. What seems to be zahir is they were the ones who were involved. Zahir means apparently, because it is considered to be established on the outset or on the outwardness of it. Seems as though these were the individuals that went for the war. وَأَمَّا الْحَقِيقِيَّةُ فَلِلْوَاجِدِ. So as for the haqiqiyya, on the other hand, so as for the al-yad al-haqiqiyya, so as for the yad al-hukmiyya, that belongs to the ghanimin, because it's thabit, it's established. Yad al-hukmiyya is established ala al-zahiri. And what does the ha? Ha goes back to yad al-hukmiyya. Yad is mu'annath. Yeah, the thubut al-yad al-hukmiyya ala al-zahiri. Ala al-zahiri means upon the apparent. The apparent meaning, so apparently this seems to be that they were the ones that, were involved in the war. So because they were involved, so that's zahir. لثبوتها على الظاهر. وأما الحقيقية, أما اليد الحقيقية فالواجد, it belongs to the true finder, right? أما اليد الحقيقية فالواجد. Okay. Okay, if you look in the hashia below, it says لثبوت على الظاهر وتحقيقه أن الغانمين إنما يستحقون 4 الأخماس. The غانمين only deserve 4/5, meaning 80%. إذا حوت أيديهم حقيقة وحكما. So they have to find the thing حقيقة. Who is the حقيقة يد? The guy that finds it, Zayd. And حكما, all the rest of them. وها هنا أيديهم حكمية. And here their hands are حكمية لأنه لما ثبتت أيديهم على ظاهر الأرض, because when their hands were established on the apparent land, meaning because they entered the non-Muslim land, حقيقة, ثبتت على باطنها حكما. So the batin applies to the batin, hukman. Batin here is referring to the inside the land. Yeah, in the sense that, we're talking about the masla of the Madin. أما الحقيقية فالواجب فكان ما في باطن غنيمة حكما لا حقيقة. Yeah. Okay. Everyone understand that? Right, next. So then he says, والحقيقية في حق فاعتبرنا الحكمية في حق الخمس. So therefore, going back to our masla, we say, we considered the hukmiyya, meaning al-yad al-hukmiyya fi haqq al-khumus, with regards to the khumus that goes back to the government. وَاعْتَبَرْنَا الْحَقِيقِيَّةَ, and we considered the yad al-haqiqiyya fi haqq 4 أخماس حتى كانت للواجد. So it's like almost the opposite, you can say. It's like saying in war, the government's yad is considered to be yad, the soldier's hands, the soldier that found the thing is considered to be yad haqiqiyya, and the other soldiers is considered to be, the ones that didn't get it, is considered to be hukmiyah. But they all get a share in it. In fact, you can almost even say that the government's hand in this is considered to be yad hukmiyah as well. Because how does the government get 1/5? Like in the Quran, Allah says the government gets 1/5. So how does the government get 1/5? It didn't even take anything. Because the soldiers took it, by virtue of the soldiers taking it, it's as though the government took it hukman. And over here it's the opposite around. So it's like saying that the government again is hukman, taking 1/5, and the person who's finding it, he is one individual. So he gets all of it, meaning the 80%. Okay, so what's the khulas this masla then? Khulas this masla is that according to us, we say that if a person was to find gold or silver or metals or anything like that in the ground, then he has to give 1/5 of this. If it's found in ard ushri ard, okay, it's found in ard ushriya. Shafi say no, the differentiates between this stuff and between treasure. We don't differentiate between treasure and we say in treasure and this is equal. It's the same. But the Shafi say no, only in treasure you have to give 1/5. And as for if you find these things, then you only have to give, according to one qawl, 2.5%. And our argument is that the hadith says, وَفِي الرِّكَازِ الْخُمُسِ. If you interpret rikaz as being anything that's found in the earth, anything that is like has been put there in the earth by Allah or by the creation, then you have to give it, whether it's what we call treasure or whether it's called natural ores, metals. And the argument that we use is we use the similarity between the ghanima argument. That the ghanima argument is considered to be, something which belonged to the kuffar at one time, and we've taken that. And as for the Sayyid example that he gives, we say no one owned it in the first place. And then the last point that we mentioned was that the yad haqiqiyya and the yad hukmiyya. Okay, next. وَلَوْ وَجَدَ, if a person was to find it في داره معدنا ليس فيه شيء. So if a person was to find in his, so let's say for example I've got a house. So I dug in my house, in my cellar. I dug, and in the cellar I found gold or silver. Then what's going to happen over there? And what's going to happen if I find gold or silver in my garden? So in my garden, in my yard, I dug and I found it there. So Imam Hanifa rahimahullah in both situations says, ليس فيه شيء. ولو وجد في داره معدنا. If he was to find ma'din, gold, silver, iron, all that, in his own house, فليس فيه شيء عند أبي حنيفة. وقال فيه الخمس. Sahibain say no, you still have to give khumus. The argument is the hadith is mutlaq. The hadith is not conditioned with وفي الركاز في أرضك أو في, doesn't say. It just says في الركاز. Whether that's in your house or in your garden or outside, doesn't matter. لإطلاق ما روينا, because of the unconditioned nature of the hadith. What's Imam Hanifa's argument? Imam Hanifa's argument, له أنه من أجزاء الأرض. He says that this is considered to be from the parts of the earth. Yeah, so gold and silver and all these things are parts of the earth. مُرَكَّبٌ فيها. It's as though it's been built into by Allah. Allah has built the gold and silver and iron into the parts of the earth. وَالْمُرَكَّب, yeah, it's compounded. وَلَا مُؤُونَةَ فِي سَائِرِ الْأَجْزَاءِ. Yeah, and there's no mu'una in all the bits of the earth, meaning no mu'una, there's no legal burden. There is no legal burden in all the pieces of earth, meaning in rocks and in anything else, soil. There's no burden, as in there's no legal ruling on there. If you find a rock in your garden, do you have to give zakat on it? No. If you find some soil in your garden, do you have to give zakat on it? No. So he goes, the same goes for if you find in your own land, in your own. فَكَذَا فِي هَذَا الْجُزْ. And that's why the same should apply in this juz. لِأَنَّ الْجُزْ لَا يُخَالِفُ الْجُمْلَةِ. Because that juz, if that piece is gold, or if that piece is silver, or if that piece is, and it's found in your own property, it takes the default ruling of your property. Yeah, there's no zakat. بِخِلَافِ الْكَنْز. So if someone says, well, why does Imam Hanifa then say, if you found in your own house, you dug your house, in your cellar, and you found in your own cellar, you found ancient treasure, yeah, ancient gold ornaments or jewelry. Why do you have to give a khumus in that? Yeah, that's different. بخلاف الكنز لأنه غير مركب فيها. It hasn't been built into it. Like it hasn't naturally been built into the land. It was put there. So differentiates between something being naturally a compound or built into the land as opposed to something that has been put there. He says if something has been put in the land naturally, then it doesn't apply. There's no zakat on it because you don't have to give zakat on the rocks. Why would you have to give zakat on you got your own land, rocks? Yeah, same thing. And if it's غير مركب, then you have to. So if someone has already put it there, does everyone understand the difference? Now, obviously, someone might say, well, what about the hadith then? How do you understand the hadith? The hadith says, في الركاز الخمس. How do you understand that that's in your land or outside your land? Why would the case of that be different then? We're going to come to that later. Okay. قال وإن وجده في أرضه. However, if he was to find it in his own land, so the difference between dar and land, okay, your dar is your property, your building. So let's say you have a building and it has that courtyard in the middle, that's part of your dar. So if you dig up that courtyard and you find gold and silver and other things there, no zakat, no khumus. And what if you dug it outside of your courtyard in your land? You have, let's say 1 acre of land outside and you dig it up there. What about that? So Abu Hanifa has 2 riwayas in this. Why does he have 2 riwayas? So the 2 riwayas, one riwayah is in Jami' al-Saghir. One riwayah is in Asl and one is in Jami' al-Saghir. That's where the problem lies. Yeah, so the Asl one seems to say there is no zakat, like the dar. Yeah, in al-Asl, no zakat. In Jami' al-Saghir, there is zakat. Yeah, so this has come quite often in the past lessons. We've seen Abu Hanifa has 2 qawls. Yeah, we've seen that, and you should write these down. Yeah, you should make a note of these where the later Hanafis have presented 2 riwayas of Abu Hanifa, one Asl and one in Jami' al-Saghir. And if you remember, we said that the default ruling should be that whatever is in Jami' al-Saghir is given precedence. Yeah, because it was written later. So he says, وَوَجْهُ الْفَرْقِ عَلَى إِحْدَاهُمَا. So the difference between the 2, if you take the other opinion, the second riwayah of Jami' al-Saghir, if you take the riwayah of Jami' al-Saghir, Abu Hanifa says, if you find gold, silver and all that in your land, outside of your dar, you have to give khumus. So what's the difference then? Why is it that in one masla he says you don't have to, on one he does? Now he wants to explain that. وَجْهُ الْفَرْقِ, the reason for the difference, عَلَى إِحْدَاهُمَا, based upon one of the 2 riwayas, وهو رواية جامع الصغير, i.e. the riwayah that says you have to give khums. أن الدار ملكت خالية عن المؤون دون الأرض. So he says this is the difference. The difference is this. Land is owned. Let's say for example, like I own land, yeah, and I own my house. So if I own my garden and I own my house, it's both mamluk, yeah. But there's a difference. What's the difference? The difference is that legally there are rulings that apply to land and that do not apply to like property. That's the difference. Anna dar mulikat, that the dar has been owned by a person, i.e. I have owned the dar khaliyatan an mu'un, from legal responsibilities. So houses, generally you look through the entire fiqh, you won't find any legal like obligations to do with your house. You won't find it. But when it comes to land, dun al-ard, you will find, for example, in the chapter of zakat, you got ushur. If you grow something there, you got to give zakat on it. So this is where the difference is. So he's saying, أن الدار ملكت خالية, that land has a property, or the building structure has been owned, khaliya, void, free of any mu'un. Mu'un means is a jam of mi'an, or yeah. So like it says here, says mashaqqa in the bain al-sutur. It means like burden or legal burden, right? دون الأرض. ولهذا وجب العشر والخراج في الأرض دون الدار. And the way we know this, like a sign of this, is for this reason: ushur and kharaj are necessary in land, but they're not necessary on a dar, right? On a house. You don't have zakat on a house. You have it in land. So if you were to grow, let's say, therefore, if you were to grow some things in your house, right, not in the land, you don't have to give zakat on that. فَكَذَا هَذِي الْمُؤُونَةِ. So likewise, this burden, this legal burden, right? So this legal burden applies in the same exact manner, meaning that this legal burden will apply in land. So if you were to find Madin inland, the legal burden of khumus would apply to it, as opposed to if you find it in your own property, in your own building structure. Do you understand the difference? Yeah. But like we said, Sahibain's argument is, that this is considered to be part of the all of it, irrespective, because the hadith is just mutlaq hadith, unconditioned, not muqayyad. Right? So again, all these kind of terms, if you're not familiar with these kind of terms, I would definitely say you should go over your usul fiqh again, or you should watch my usul fiqh, basic usul fiqh that I've done, right? In there, mutlaq, muqayyad, all these terms. And if you've done usul shashi as well, they come in there as well. Okay, وَإِن وُجِدَ رِكَازًا. Now, okay, so this is all. So I just want to show you guys in Radd al-Muhtar. So let me just bring up Radd al-Muhtar. Okay, so here's Radd al-Muhtar. I'm just going to show you text of the different types of land. So he hasn't really kind of gone into the different types of land over here, and the reason I'm going to show you is because there's a long discussion that he brings up, and I'm not going to go through the discussion, but you guys can, in your own time, you can look at that. Okay, because okay, so if you look, this is Radd al-Muhtar. He says. So first of all, he goes into the whole discussion of this linguistic, من لغة الركس, إثبات ما مركوز مال مركوز تحت أرض أعم من كون الراكز الخالق والمخلوق. That's the key thing, that is the difference between us and the Shafi'is, between معدن and ركاز. قال معدن خلقي, خلقه الله, وكنز أي مال مدفون. So we differentiate, we say that دفن الكفار لأنه الذي يخمس وجد مسلم أو ذمي. Okay, it goes on. Hadid. Okay, so here's the other point that he says. Hadid, when he says hadid, he means كل جامد ينطبع بالنار. Every solid that's found in the earth, because they never used to have a word for metal in them days. They didn't have a word for metal. So only later on that the word metal came about. But they're describing as being كل جامد, every solid in the earth that bends, right? Bend, softens with fire. Yeah. وَمِنْهُ الزِّئْبَقْ فَخَرَجَ الْمَاءِ. So therefore he says things that are found in the earth are of three types. Okay, so you have solids, and then you have water things, like for example, nift, petroleum or crude oil. Qar is asphalt or tar. And غير منطبع. So there's three types of things that you can get in the land. You can get basically metals that are malleable with fire, and then you get liquids. So if you find liquids in your garden, right? So your crude oil you found, or you found something like that. And number three is like other things, like for example rocks, and this is all to do with land, by the way. Okay, this is not to do with sea. So the sea rulings are different. What if you went into the sea and you found pearls? So the ruling of pearls is different. Okay, the sea discoveries that you make are considered to be different. Okay, so he says ثلاثة أقسام منتبع كالذهب والفضة والرصاص مائع كالملح والقير والنفط وما ليس شيء منهما كاللؤلؤ والفيروزج كحل. All these things are considered to be of that as well. So anyway, he says, this is the part I want to show you guys. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ عَلَى أَرْبَعَةِ أَقْسَامٍ. Land is considered to be of four types. مُبَاحَةٌ. So mubaha means it's allowed for anyone to take. مَمْلُوكَةٌ, which is owned لِجَمِيعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, by the public. And مَمْلُوكَةٌ لِمُعَيَّن, owned by an individual. And number four, waqfun. So this is considered to be something that is an endowment. Okay, so he says الأول لا يكون أشريا ولا خراجيا. Mubaha is not ushri, not kharaji. Therefore, Remember the Hidayah Masla where he says, if you find it in a ard ushrin kharaji, then you have to give 1/5 to the government. Based on that, you wouldn't have to give it if you took it from ard mubah. Number 2, وكذا الثاني, and the second type, like the ard of Misr, al-ghayr al-mawqufa. Yeah, so he says the thani, the second type, mamluka. فإنها وإن كانت خراجية, even though it's kharaji, al-asl, because it's taken from non-Muslims. However, it's now become in the ruling of the government, etc. And then he says, وَالثالث وَالرَّابِعِ إِمَّا أُشْرِيٌّ وَخَرَاجِيٌّ. And the fourth and the fifth one, i.e. privately owned and waqaf, those fall under ushri kharaji. They can either be ushri or kharaji. Now here he has a whole discussion of whether he agrees with all of this or not. Does he agree with this or not? He's got a whole discussion about this. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you guys the difference between ardun ushriyun, ardun kharaji, and the 4 types of land. And when Sahib al-Hidayah says if he finds it in an ard ushri or kharaji, he has to give a khumus, but he doesn't talk about what if he finds it, or if he does not find it in ard ushri or kharaji. And then he talks about if he finds it in private land. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to this. Okay, now actually finished there. The one thing I just wanted to mention about the pearls issue. So he's not going to mention in Hidayah, but in other books like I showed you in Radd al-Muhtar, it's mentioned about the pearls where they say, the pearl is something which actually comes from rain, matar al-rabi', spring rain. So spring rain falls in the sea, and then it goes down in the water and it gets inside of a clam, shell, and it closes, and then that slowly develops into a pearl. Now again, these kind of statements, it's not in the Quran, it's not from authentic hadith, right? And you might hear some scholars mentioning on the minbar. Again, this is all based upon speculation. This is not solid science. Like if you were to investigate it from a scientific point of view today, how are pearls made, you'd probably find a different answer. And sometimes the books of fiqh, they do mention strange, like very strange opinions, bizarre sort of like opinions. And we've seen, those of you guys who do Radd al-Muhtar with me, you guys have seen this kind of repeated pattern in certain masail where they'll come out with a certain masala assuming like mermaids exist. Like some of the masail are based upon the idea that mermaids exist, for example, or based upon the idea that humans and jinns can have babies, or based upon ideas like the mist that rises from the sea is based upon dragons breathing, right? So this is not from the Quran, not from the hadith. So when some people point these things out and say, look how Muslims in the past used to believe in these things, that's fine, because that's all based upon society at that time. If a society at one time used to believe in mermaids, or society at one time believed pearls are made from the raindrops, from spring raindrops, that fall inside of a clam and they become pearls, then that's no problem. That's not a attack against Islam. That's just a mistake that was made by individuals in the past. Okay, we'll stop there. Okay, we'll just summarize what we've done. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. So babul fil ma'adin wal rikaz. So we said the idea was anything that is found in the earth, gold, silver, etc. Then you have to give khumus on it if it's found in ard kharaji or ushri, right? And he doesn't mention about what if it's not found in ard aradi and ushri. And other books mention there's no zakat on it. What does Shafi say? Shafi says no zakat at all, unless gold and silver is found. And he obviously gives an example and says this is like mubah property or mubah item that a person has got there first, like hunting. What about gold and silver? According to one of his qawls, you got to give zakat on 2.5%, even if a year hasn't passed. And what about according to us? What's our response? Our response is that in rikaz there is khumus. So how do we explain rikaz? We say it's from the word rakas, which means firmly established, firmly placed, and that also applies to Madin as well, like metal ores in the ground. And we also use this argument that look, that in a war, you have a booty, and if you get that war booty, you can't make a resemblance between this and hunting an animal. There's two different things. One, someone had it, and one, someone didn't have it. So the qiyas is not really a valid qiyas. And also, we have to understand the concept of yad haqiqiyya and yad hukmiyya. So in a battle, if all the people go for battle, one person finds the booty and all the others also find it, they also possess it, but their possession is considered to be hukmi, legal possession, and this one individual's possession is considered to be haqiqi possession. And the same applies to this hadith. So the hand of the government in it is hukmi possession, whereas the hand of the one who finds the gold and silver is considered to be haqiqi. That's why he gets 80% and the rest the government gets fifth, 20%. Okay, what if he was to find it in his own structure, his house? Then according to Abu Hanifa, no, nothing. Sahibain say khums because of the unrestricted nature of the hadith. And what if it was found, and what's the reason for this? The reason for this is because Abu Hanifa says this is just indistinguishable from the ground. It's built into the ground to such an extent you can't distinguish it from normal rocks. So therefore, there's no zakat, there's no khums in there. And what about in, for example, outside? So outside your building, in the land that you own, there's two qawls. Saghir qawl says yes, you have to give khums, and Asl says no. Okay, what's the difference then? So he said the reason why you have to give it according to the Jami' Saghir one is because there's a legal burden on land that in fiqh that you don't find in property, in a house structure. That's why you give it. What about if you find treasure? Well, treasure is different because it's not murakkab, it's mawdu', it's been placed there by someone. Okay, any other questions? No. Alright guys, jazakumullah khair, and inshallah lesson will